Big stuff was happening this week in the economy, of course, because we're at this end. I talk about 3 revolutionary cycles: a political revolution cycle, a 250-year political revolution cycle, an 80-year financial revolution cycle, and a 50-year technological revolution cycle. And here we are at the end of this 80-year financial revolution cycle. So, of course, the economy is going crazy. We're witnessing sovereign debt crises. The United States government, the European Union, the Bank of Japan, they're all going bankrupt. And so as they're going bankrupt, they're printing more money. It's pushing inflation sky high. And of course, we're seeing that in the United States. The Fed has been on this warpath to stop inflation by raising rates at the fastest rate in history. We talk about this all the time. And good news, it looks like they're winning. It looks like the data is showing that CPI, the Consumer Price Index, it looks like it's coming down. Congratulations. We're all the way down. I believe last September we were a high of 9.1, and the latest data that came out this week shows we're down to 4.9%. I think that's 10 months now of consecutive year-over-year decline. Woo! Congratulations. Good job to the Federal Reserve. I have, let me see. Let's do this. There we go. Good job, Federal Reserve. Congratulations. Now, if you watch my main YouTube channel, you know I did a video, I think in January, and I talked about how they were going to change the way they calculated CPI. And I said, just changing the way they were going to calculate CPI, if nothing else changed, but just change the way we calculate it, we're going to see CPI dropping drastically. And I said by the end of the summer, it could be down by 3%. So here we are, surprise, surprise, and we're down to 4.9. We're trending down, and I think that new calculation is helping quite a bit. What is that new calculation? Well, basically, what they were doing is instead they would typically take a 2-year comp, a 2-year comparison, and they change it to a 1-year comparison. Now, why does that matter? Well, because if you look back to last year at the highest point in 50 years and you measure from there, well, then it looks like we dropped a lot because you're measuring from the very peak that we've ever been. On a 2-year drop, on a 2-year average, you wouldn't have seen that as much. So we have come down. However, let me put this into perspective. The CPI is a basket. It tracks the basket of goods through time, so it tracks your quality of life. So back in 1980, they went to the grocery store and they had a basket of goods: steak, milk, cheese, etc. And then they're supposed to track that basket throughout time to see how the prices change. However, they constantly change the basket. They constantly change the way they calculate it. So Shadow Stats is a website, a company that tracks the original basket of goods through time. And according to Shadow Stats, real world inflation is down to 12.9%, down from a peak of 17.3% in June of last year. So not the 4.9% they're telling us, the 12.9% is the real number. But actually, while that's the real number, going back to the original calculation, to the original basket of goods, it's not the same for everybody. Measuring inflation that way is sort of ridiculous because inflation affects us all differently. If you're living in your parents' basement watching Netflix and eating Taco Bell, inflation hasn't barely touched you at all. If you're buying lakefront property in Austin, Texas, sending 2 or 3 of your kids to college or putting them through weddings, inflation has ravaged you, right? Homes on the lake in Texas have gone up 150%. So if you're buying that home, then inflation is massive for you. And again, if you're living in your parents' basement, it hasn't even affected you. So inflation is different for all of us, depends on what you buy. I eat steak all the time. So inflation has affected me more. What the CPI basket does is say, well, people aren't going to buy steak now. Now they'll buy hamburger meat. And now they won't buy hamburger meat anymore. Now they'll eat tofu. Well, I'm not. I'm going to continue eating steak, so it's affected me more. And it affects all of us differently based off of the things that we're buying and based off the proportions and things like that. So just know that even the Shadow Stats number, while it's accurate and true to the way it used to be calculated, it's not accurate and true for every one of us. In addition to that, while it seems that the Fed's attack on inflation is somewhat working, bringing it down from 9.1 to 4.9, it's not without damage to the economy. As a matter of fact, that's their whole goal, is to make everybody broke, because if they make you broke, you don't have enough money to buy things. If you don't have enough money to buy things, then they hope prices come down. However, when they make everybody broke, you also don't have money to buy goods and services from businesses. And so it's been very, very bad for the economy. As a matter of fact, the small business index, the optimism index, just hit a 10-year low. It fell by 1.1 points in April to 89, hitting the lowest level in just over 10 years, as business owners reported dampened expectations for the broad economy, sales, and earnings. The biggest source of concern was the labor market, with 45% of owners reporting job openings they couldn't fill last month, compared to 43% in March. And inflation was a close second, as 33% of owners said they raised average selling prices. So that's the big concern, the labor market. They can't fill the job openings, and then they're having to raise their prices. And I've been seeing in a lot of cases, they're saying that, look, we've been raising our prices, because obviously we can't sell our stuff at a loss, but people don't want to pay it. And so what does that do? It slows down the economy. Of course, it's not rocket science, right? In addition, it's taking a toll. It takes a toll all across the ecosystem. And so, for example, those businesses now can't afford their rent. We're seeing in New York City, there's so many office buildings empty. It's about 50% of where it was pre-pandemic. They said that you could get 26 Empire State buildings into New York's empty office building space. 50% occupancy. Now, if you're a building owner, or you're a pension fund, or your retirement account is invested into a group that has invested into these REITs and these funds, you're taking a big, big loss. Downtown San Francisco is not much different. There's 18.4 million square feet of empty office space. Now, part of it is because businesses have been hammered. Part of it's also because they don't want to stay in San Francisco anymore. Everybody's bailed out of there. And on top of it, we have the banks continuing to get hammered, as everybody's been pulling their money out of the banks to put them into money market funds and treasuries. Why are you making 0% in the bank, at Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Citibank, et cetera, when you can go make 5% in a treasury, in a money market fund? And of course, you shouldn't. Hopefully you're not doing that. And so you don't have to. And so massive amounts of money have been moving over there. The economy is moving fast.